Yo, what is going on everyone? Guiding Light here, and in this video, I'm going to show you guys how it is you can beat the boss fight for the sentient pest. Now, this was actually one of the hardest bosses so far, and it definitely takes a lot of teamwork to get through this mission. Now, this mission also will definitely require ranged weapons, so during your start of your run, you want to focus on trying to get your hands on a bow or a staff so that you have the ability to do damage at range. You could also go in with the archer or mage class to make this easier. However, I chose to run the healing class and be more of a support character. Since I was using the matchmaking feature, I wanted to be sure to support the two players that I was playing with. Now, there is also the fact that this boss does a crazy amount of poison damage, so during your run, you may want to try to find ways to mitigate this using relics or different potions and things. When going into this fight, I managed to get up to level 12 on this run, and I also got super lucky and got a legendary drop for my weapon. However, I don't believe this is the only reason I was able to get through this boss. But as you can see, my teammate was running the archer, and then the third person was running the guardian. These are great classes for this boss as well because the guardian's abilities are so good and can also be used to revive teammates from a distance. This boss is definitely not easy and it requires strategy, unlike some of the other bosses that you can kind of just beat if you have enough damage output. Now, this boss is a bit special because it actually will split into two. There's going to be this crab and then the moth. Now, the moth will continuously spray poison out, and the crab, as you can see, is going to have these rock attacks which come up from the bottom. Now, this is why you do want to have ranged attacks because anytime that you're up close to the boss, he will send out devastating rock attacks, and then on top of that, the moth will spray this mist everywhere. And as you can see, that mist will build up a poison. Once that bar fills up, you'll take poison damage, and it's extremely hard to recover from that, and will end up just wasting heals. It's best to try to keep your distance from this boss as his attacks hit so hard, as you can see right there, going in for almost 60% of my bar in a single hit. So this is why you want to play range. Even though I have a legendary sword, I can't really get into the opportunity to actually be using it. That is what is a disadvantage to running Revenant. However, because I am running Revenant, I can switch around and I can spawn in these ghosts, which can do damage from afar and also do damage over time. There's also the possibility that the boss will have aggression towards the ghost, which will distract them, giving my teammates time to heal and also reset themselves, let them stamina and things like that respawn. Also, the boss will go into it is called like this rock mode, where you will be able to rush in and get damage off. So even though you're running Revenant, if you choose to, you can still also get massive damage off, as you can see here, but it does have to be timed properly. So if you choose to use Revenant during these phases, you want to try and pop this Sebastian boss so that it can massively damage him over time. But it's also important to keep track of the moth. As you can see, one of our teammates was luckily kind of just aggroing the moth the entire time. This was keeping him off of our back, allowing us to actually deal damage to the crab. So you always want to try to have somebody aggroing the moth, whether it's you or the teammates that you're playing with. But as you can see, even though the boss is on me, I'm just distracting him, and this is allowing my two teammates to deal damage without having to worry about the crab coming and swiping them in the back. So sometimes it's actually important to not deal damage and just do distractions. You see a lot of people being super aggressive, wanting to just be right up on top of the boss all the time. There's really no benefit to this. You might get a couple hits in, but then the boss is going to take down your health massively, and it's much easier if you just walk away from the boss at times. Now the boss has multiple phases, as you can see now. The crab will burrow underground, but the moth will still be left behind, spraying mist as well. The reason why I'm hanging so far back is because I've done this boss about 10 or 15 times, and I've seen my teammates go down in one hit. As you can see there, anytime the crab burrows, they're going to come back up from under the ground, and when they do, it's going to be a pretty devastating attack. So it's actually, like I was saying, best to just back off the boss. And it's hard to coordinate this when in matchmaking, though, and now I'm going in for the res, and it's only making it me take damage now even more. That's why as soon as one teammate goes down, it can start a chain reaction, and it is best to just not bother. But as you can see, I was able to take the boss away, use his aggro to my advantage, take the boss away from my teammates who are trying to get revives, and allow him to very easily get that revive. This is where I see people make mistakes. They want to aggressively go for revives and not realize that you're bringing the boss to your teammates that are trying to get revives, and then you all end up getting one hit and have to restart the entire run. So just take your time on these runs. There's literally no time limit, and there's no reason to rush through these bosses, especially after going 50 minutes, an hour to even get to this point. You do not want to end up rushing through the boss. So as you can see here, now that there's openings, I am going in for damage when I can, but I don't stick around too long because I always know that those attacks are coming in. I did kind of mess up and forget to grab myself a spell or a bow along the way, like I was saying, but it almost kind of did help because it allowed me to play even more support for my teammates. Now I'm going to skip a little bit ahead through this boss fight. You kind of just have to rinse and repeat this method until you get him to about halfway of his health bar, and this is where the boss fight will change. But we took a huge advantage of the boss going into his crab or his stasis mode, and we were able to get the boss to about half health. Now, once this happens, the entire map will change. You'll see flowers begin to grow around the map, and now the boss will actually link together. The moth and the crab will now link together, and they will be able to double up their attacks. Now, once this happens, you want to get as far away from the boss as possible. This is why I'm trying to run really, really far away. I've also got a shield on me now as well, because these attacks, as you can see, are going to one hit or almost one hit you and your teammates. I was not able to coordinate this with my teammates, however, though, so they ended up going down, and I just played at a distance. Now, I tried to pop this Sebastian character or a ghost to try to get the attention of the boss and get the boss completely off my teammates, and that was really the only thing I could do. Sometimes just staying alive is the best method, because if all three players get knocked, you're going to have to reset the whole entire run. So you really do have to take your times on these runs. I'm also saving my ultimate ability at this point because I know that my ultimate ability can revive both my teammates instantly if they just so happen to go down. Now at this point, you really have to take your time with this and only get hits when every so often. This boss fight does take quite a while to get through. The first phase is really not that tough, but once you get into the second phase, that is when you will need to really just kind of chip away at the boss, because these once they're grouped together, between the poison damage and the ranged and melee damage, it becomes really hard to deal damage. It's really important just to not take damage in this fight and not worry so much about dealing it. So I will let the gameplay of the rest of the fight play out, but it was about 10 minutes of us chipping away at the boss, but you'll be able to see the strategy we used to finally get through this. This did take me about 10 or 15 tries, which was quite annoying, but I was glad to finally get through the mission. So hopefully this helps you, and I will catch you.
you